Honoring Choices, Giving Thanks is a co-production of the Twin Cities Medical Society, providing physician leadership for the health of our communities, and TPT's Minnesota channel. Funding has been provided by these foundations and companies.
Thanksgiving. It's a time when the gifts that are given are the ones of the heart. A time when sharing end-of-life plans can be one of those gifts.
Oh my gosh, I get to make Thanksgiving dinner, Javita. I'm so excited. I mean, look at my mashed potatoes.
I know, look at them.
I know it's a mess, but let me tell you something. I am so excited because I know that we can have a conversation tonight at the table that will take everybody's mind off of these forsaken sweet potatoes.
That's sweet potatoes?
Yeah. But there's things to talk about tonight, right?
Yeah. Of course,
So-
always. Family together, lots to talk about.
I know, because I thought I'd just bring up the whole health directive thing.
Is there something I need to know?
No, girl, you know we've talked about this. I mean, you convinced me that it's important for us all to have a health directive.
Yes, I did, but
Right.
not at Thanksgiving, Gerald.
Oh, come on, it's the perfect time to do it. It's the perfect time.
Yeah, but Gerald, it's Thanksgiving. We're not having that talk tonight. No, not tonight, honey.
Look, sis, you were the one that told me that we have to have the conversation, right?
Yes.
And since we've been talking about it and they've been kind of listening, we'll have them all in the room at the same time. There are no gifts. It's the perfect time. It's not that holiday, right? We don't have to worry about it. Usually people will sit and, you know, talk about ridiculous things. Why not talk about something really important?
Okay, Geraldine, look, our grandparents didn't have to have those deep conversations at Thanksgiving. Why are we doing it?
Well, yeah, but they didn't have to have ventilators and tubes and all the new technology either. We all need to talk about it, V. You had to talk with me. I did it. You did it. All God's children got to do it.
Health directives at Thanksgiving. What's next?
A really great turkey.
I don't find it surprising that we in American society have a tough time dealing with end-of-life decisions, because I don't think we've ever really been well equipped to deal with questions of death and dying. I think, you know, in earlier centuries, in earlier period where people were confronted with death and dying on a daily basis, it was a far more, I mean, I hate to say it, but a routine part of life. Through the 19th century, you know, one of the diseases that people most typically died from, aside from accidents and injuries, were infectious diseases like cholera, which would strike cities in epidemic waves.
At that time, the sick were cared for at home and died at home.
No one wanted to die in a hospital in the early 19th, mid-19th, even late 19th century, that the people who were sick, who were taken care of in hospitals and who died in hospitals were generally the very poor, the indigent, those without families. So, I mean, if you ended up in a hospital, that was, you know, that belied your social standing.
One of the earliest major changes in medical care was the discovery and acceptance of the idea that germs caused many diseases. That discovery led to dramatic changes in where care was delivered.
By the early 20th century, the 1910s, 1920s, far fewer people died at home. The hospitals, administrators, and physicians recrafted hospitals as a place in which everyone should get their care, that middle-class people should go to hospitals to get their care, because in the hospital you have these elite physicians who are experts in medical care. Actually, surgeons were a huge draw for hospitals because surgery took place in hospitals where there was anesthesia, pain medicine, and operating rooms for, you know, doing these more complex surgeries.
With surgeries and ever-increasing medical knowledge, people were living longer. Infectious diseases like polio still took their toll, but a mechanical wonder came along and changed that.
A classic medical technology that's credited with saving people from imminent death was the iron lung, and the iron lung was developed in 1929 in the early 1930s as a way to treat certain polio patients. The iron lung would mechanically breathe for the polio patient.
In the 1940s, antibiotics revolutionized medical care.
Antibiotics were the first time that physicians could really effectively treat so many of the infectious diseases that had plagued populations for centuries.
With the success of antibiotics came more new life-saving drugs.
1950s, 1960s really kind of characterized as a therapeutic revolution in medicine because there was massive explosion in new drugs, truly effective drugs being introduced to the market.
By this time, the home remedies and rituals of death and dying had fallen by the wayside. New technologies kept coming at a faster and faster pace.
In the 1960s, kidney dialysis was developed to treat patients with chronic kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, where the kidney damage is severe and the only way to recover is to have a kidney transplant. But of course, kidneys are in short supply. And so the question was how to keep these patients alive, while they wait for transplant. This was a technology, this was a treatment that could really sustain potentially productive members of society. I mean, that's how they talked about it.
The modern respirator, something we now take for granted, has only been around since the 1970s.
In order for patients to undergo heart and lung surgery, they needed to be artificially ventilated. And so the artificial respirator was a large part of a response to that.
And throughout the 80s and 90s and into this century, better cancer treatments, more refined and targeted medicines, and a wealth of other high-tech cures have come online, all in an effort to help us live longer. No wonder our parents' and grandparents' experiences with death and dying don't resonate with us. They didn't have antibiotics and dialysis and respirators to consider. If someone became sick in their time, they died, and that was that.
Javita, have you told your children what you want at the end of life?
My sons? Are you kidding me? No, honey. I'm trying to get what I want while I'm on this side of glory out of them. Are you kidding me? No, I haven't had that conversation. Girl, they're not ready. What?
Well, nobody's ready. I wasn't ready when you told me about it, remember?
Geraldine, it's totally different talking about mom and pops, that's one thing, but now we're talking about our children.
No, but you remember what Pops wanted. Remember how clear he made it?
Yes.
He said, I know exactly what I want. I want to be at home when I die. I want to make sure. He had it laid out.
He did.
And we did it. We did it together, right?
We did.
And it was beautiful.
Yes.
It changed my life. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, but I don't know. My kids,
Look, your children
ready.
need to know what you want. Tell them it's your living will. I like that term, living will. Just tell them about it. I'll be right there, honey. I'll make sure that it's done right.
You going before me.
I'll make sure, what? Excuse me?
Pass me the potatoes.
You just better make sure my makeup is right, that's all I know.
I'm originally from Cuba, and I lived there until I was 18. At 18, I left. United States became my home, and it's been a wonderful home for me. I had always enjoyed drawing and doing little paintings. It just blossomed beyond anything that I could possibly imagine. I knew that I had the beginning of emphysema in some fashion. Then when the head of transplant at the hospital comes into your room and says, you have no more than 2 months, your lungs don't exist, they're shut. You get the message instantly, there's no questions left. The next thing that happens is your wife starts crying, and you then try to console her. That consolation process then makes you realize, okay, this is who you care the most about. What can you do to make this transition easier for her and for the children and even for yourself? We have 4 children, so we brought all of them and discussed what we were all going to face. It was very difficult. No one is really prepared for it. There are families that are afraid of being too close to each other, and I've seen that. Gladys and I have been married for 45 years. That's a lifetime. And it's very difficult to live that. But I realized that it's just part of life. The same as birth, death is also as important, and it's going to happen no matter what. So we were very close as a family. A lot of crying, no doubt. There are times when it doesn't matter how tough you think you are, you're going to break down. There are subjects that we wish would never come, and yet we cannot help but face them. Each children, in essence, began discussing what was important to them and what they wanted to talk about. It became individual conversations, but all towards the same goal. That was about 2 years and 8 months. So it's been a long time, a long time. I've done a lot of things in that time. And my doctor said, I don't want to know about your illness and this or that. I just want to ask you this. Do you want to live or do you want to die? If you want to live, then I'm going to try to keep you alive as long as I can. You tell me the parameters.
No, don't touch that.
Gladly.
Don't mess with my potatoes, honey. That's gonna be fabulous later on.
Yeah, okay. Hey, speaking of fabulous, how would you like your final celebration to go? I mean, what do you want?
Well, a party. I mean, a big, long party. Well, honey, we're gonna get down. It's gonna be a party.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, maybe it'll be like the Hmong community. Your girlfriend Denise was telling me about her husband. You know, he's in the Hmong community, and he was saying that they get a chance to celebrate a whole week.
A week of
a
celebration?
Week, so it'd be like Gerald Gras instead of Mardi Gras. Gerald
I like that. It will wear our mother out.
I know, she'd only show up for the half of the party, just the first half, honey.
I can't even get her to understand exactly what I want, let alone what I want for the celebration.
Yeah, you better tell her about cremation.
I know.
You better tell her.
See, this is what I'm talking about. This is why we have to have the conversation.
I got you.
Minnesota's Hmong community has deeply rooted end-of-life traditions and beliefs. As Hmong families have settled in the state over the last 4 decades, some changes have occurred, while many other traditions have been maintained. On St. Paul's East Side, a group of Hmong elders gathers inside the Jaylokashia Elder Center for lunch and a social hour. Among the elders gathered here are shamans who facilitate traditional funerals. Hmong funeral traditions are closely tied to the clan structure and to one's specific birthplace. In Hmong culture, when a child is born, their placenta is buried near the main post of the house. After death, that person's spirit needs to return to take their placenta so that they can enter the afterlife.
That big post represents the main post in the house, and that's when we do our ceremony of sending his spirit back. And so it represents that this is the post, this is where your placenta is, you need to pick it up so you can go.
Ku Vang owns Legacy Funeral Home on St. Paul's West Side, which serves a predominantly Hmong clientele.
You know, Hmong funerals it is truly an end-of-life event. Our funerals are long because we have spiritual obligations that we have to meet. We believe that what happens in this lifetime dictates what happens in future lifetime. So we have to give our elders a good, proper funeral because that will give them a good opportunity in the future lifetime. This is a very traditional Hmong pattern.
Legacy Funeral Home provides a measure of how end-of-life traditions have changed as the faith composition of the Hmong community has slowly changed.
We have an East and a West chapel. And through usage, our East chapel has kind of migrated towards more of our Christian families. We've seen Lutherans and Catholics where we still see a glimpse of the cultural piece. So we don't have that sending of the Spirit back, but we still have guests in which arrives, honored guests in which arrives, and we still receive them, and we still notify them at the time of death that says, your brother-in-law has passed away, or your uncle has passed away, you need to come and pay your respect.
Some customs regarding discussions about the end of life have also started to change. This can be seen in the realm of funeral planning, for instance.
We typically don't talk about death until it happens. We've kind of moved away from that a little bit. We've actually started talking about, you know, can we look at some prearrangement? Can we prepare for it? It's something that I think has to happen, and it will happen more gradually.
So, like, you think your boys will fuss about what you've decided to do with your life, especially when, you know, if you're in the hospital, you want to be resuscitated or not? Would they fight about something like that?
I would be shocked if they didn't. They're as different as East and West. I mean, they have totally different ideas about life and death. Are you kidding me?
This is very true.
Yes, my boys are. Oof.
Well, I do know a lot of families have a lot of friction.
Yes.
This is very common. It's difficult. Even though we say what we want, they don't want to do what we want. And that kind of friction can mess everything up. We do not want to do that.
At one point in the process, she got a fever. She was in a nursing home, she got the fever. The nursing home called and said, hey, you know, she has a very bad fever and, you know, we want to know what to do. And they said, in all likelihood, the fever would kill her. Nobody was around, they couldn't find anybody. They called me, I was at a ball game. They said, you know, because I was the second phone number after Rick's dad from the nursing home. They couldn't find your dad. They said, here's what's going on. I went over there and I sat with her all night long, and she was so much at peace, and I thought, it's finally over for this. It's because she was so agitated, and you can see, I think, you can see when somebody's starting to leave, and she was. And I thought, isn't this wonderful? It's finally over for her. And then the next morning, we had the big meeting, and Rick was out of town. I go to the family meeting. Now, at this point, I'd been in the family for 30 years. And we sit down and they say, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to give her the antibiotics? And her healthcare directive very clearly said, don't do this. And her son, her one biological son, said, no, I want her to get antibiotics. I want her to get better. You know, and his dad said the same thing, and I said, hey, she did not want that. She very specifically did not want that. And I was told, you're not part of the family.
The relationship that we had, we were very unified, I thought, in...
I did call you the next day spitting tag.
Well,
they gave her the antibiotics.
We always communicated well between each other because we wanted to remain on the same front. As painful as her message to me might be, she cared for her as good or better than we did, objectively and subjectively. Mm-hmm. So we might not have always enjoyed what she had to say, yet the truth hurts.
So I was that voice that maybe sometimes people didn't want to hear, but trying to help her. I looked at it like she was still in that tortured body, and they made her stay there, and it killed me. It did.
He was never able to eat from the stroke forward. That was one of the decisions that had to be made. We had to decide he needed to have a G-tube. He would fight to pull before he got a G-tube, they get these nose feeders. I forget the name of those, but, and they'd have to shove, and the first few days he was so strong that they had to put like a Velcro restraining thing, because he would rip everything out, but his right side was nothing. I felt like in the first 3 or 4 days after the stroke, I could still sort of see him. I felt like he still was sort of able to connect, and he would say to me, and we were all there, let me go, let me go. And I said, Dad, it's not, and I'd say, Dad, it's not quite that simple. we're trying to do the best for you. And by that time, since he didn't have a health directive, the doctors and nurses were all on top of that. They said, we have to do what we have to do. And we were starting to argue about what it was that we wanted for my dad. And once they picked up on that, it was kind of out of our hands. The only thing that we could have possibly worked together at that point was the DNR thing right away, but we weren't going to be able to do that because my sister, she got really angry. And then the feeding tube issue came up, and I said, do we need to do this? And she said, what are you crazy? I'm not going to listen to this. You're going to just let him die? We're going to just let him starve to death? And I said, well, it might be the best thing. I don't think he would want this. And so that began, and then it was just, you know, we just got further and further apart. And there was just so much pain around it. And, you know, my brother was caught in between. The thing that I struggled with the most, that just tore me apart, was I felt like I was letting my dad down. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and because he had just spoken to me in June, and when I spoke with my siblings, they couldn't hear it. They said, well, he might have said that to you, but he didn't say that to me. I'm like, all right, okay. And so then I would just be trapped, and it was like my heart was breaking, because I just would see him laying there, and I'd say, Dad, I'm doing the best I can.
Okay, so now that you've convinced me this is a great conversation to have today, tell me where people go to get this information. We can't assume that it's right at the fingertips.
Oh,
like
no.
Uncle Raymond,
right,
living in Indiana, his children are away,
yeah,
distance between them. He would not know where to turn
to
get
but
this
that's
information.
Easy.
Easy?
Okay, no, seriously, we have the entire web at our fingertips, dear. And of course, the resources are there for you to find the facilitators to make it happen. You have your wishes, they can make your wish come true. That's the bottom line.
Ooh.
Like, you're gonna help my wish come true with this stuffing.
One genie at a time. Pull it up on the computer.
Filling out a healthcare directive is not an easy thing. When we make decisions, we weigh it based upon a lot more than just a checkbox of, we can do a treatment because of this and you'll get this outcome. The outcomes that most of us think about mentally, but no one ever explores with us, are our goals and our values and our preferences, but we don't often share those because no one asks us about them.
What makes life most worth living to me? A person should answer that for now.
There are resources today across the Minnesota metropolitan area where all the health systems are actively engaged in improving the process around helping you complete your healthcare directive. And what they have done is invested time and money and resources to allow healthcare professionals become trained to actually help facilitate patients, families, and their loved ones into having a discussion around their treatment wishes.
Each group of 3 has got an observer, a patient, and a facilitator.
And their training is really not to tell you to do a treatment or not to do a treatment, but they're trained in skills to really objectively facilitate a better understanding between you and your healthcare agent so that both of you are on the same page, and then actually help you get it written down in a way that you feel reflects your goals, your wishes accurately.
And so having this discussion will really help to find out what she really wants.
Okay, Geraldine, we got 2 major objectives here, right?
Yes.
Fabulous Thanksgiving dinner.
And it is fabulous.
Yes, and to have fabulous conversation, that's really, really important.
Right, right.
Okay, so we're gonna cover the health directive, we're gonna cover the afterlife plans, everything that we can imagine talking about. Now, we can expect to have a little pushback from Uncle Ray. He's not gonna gravitate towards
Well, he gets no dessert, darling.
Good luck with that one, honey.
Oh, these are my famous red velvet cupcakes.
Okay, plan B. Just in case, they're not quite famous yet, honey, but listen, plan B. If he's not really ready to talk about it, at least we can schedule a date for the whole family to sit down and have that chit-chat.
Okay, good enough. Let's serve my turkey.
Your turkey, our turkey. Do you know how hard I worked on this thing?
Why would you put the core in there like that?
Honey, okay.
That's ridiculous.
Okay,
no, it's just fine.
I got it.
Look, woman, I need to make an entrance.
You ready?
Okay.
Here, lift. It's heavy.
Okay, get that pear on the side.
Okay.
Thank you. Hurry up, Chanel.
We gotta make an entrance, child. I'm ready.
Thanksgiving
So remember, having the conversation is a gift of love.
To your family.
Honoring Choices, Giving Thanks is a co-production of the Twin Cities Medical Society, providing physician leadership for the health of our communities, and TPT's Minnesota channel. Funding has been provided by these foundations and companies.